The first Dungeons & Dragons Direct broadcast was played on the Dungeons & Dragons Beyond Twitch channel. So let's get into some of the announcements. So starting with the two big announcements, Spelljammer and Dragonlance are going to be released, and I'll get into more detail on them near the end. What I would like to talk about first is just some of the interesting little announcements that were made that I can get through quickly. There was the Radiant Citadel book, and I think many people were aware of that book. I was just aware of the name. I didn't really know what it was about, and it seems like a campaign nexus or a multiverse nexus, the campaign setting. And the adventures are set either within the Radiant Citadel or traversing into other campaign settings. And it just seems like storylines that Marvel Comics and DC Comics have used in the past, where they take different multiverse characters and bring them together to solve some sort of multiversal problem. I don't know if that's the main storyline in this campaign, but it seems to reason that that would be something that they might do. And it's a way of tying your campaign and other campaigns, and, to go from Forgotten Realms to Dragonlance or something like that. It's just an easy little nexus point. And what I liked about it was the art, the very different styles of art based on different multiversal settings. I like that. And I might actually pick up this book now. I wasn't necessarily interested in the first place. Then there were two new products that were announced. They are these campaign cases, and they're made of plastic, it looks like. They're not of a premium design, and they really are just to hold things for a dungeon master to carry from place to place. Map tiles, which other manufacturers make. These map tiles that fit together in almost like a puzzle-like form. A square with like puzzle edges, and that have dry erase, and then they flip over and they have different facets on either side. Either that's like forest or field on one side, and then cobblestone on the other. That's pretty simple, and it's got a case to carry it around, and I guess your dry erase pens and that sort of stuff, and I guess dice as well. And then interestingly, this other one carried what looked like monster pogs. And it was kind of interesting that this was like an idea I had in 2018, and I was working on the idea of getting these manufactured in 2019. And then, of course, 2020 hit and a bunch of things changed. And so I started working on other things and put this on the back burner. Basically, what it is just plastic pogs. And it looks like you can affix stickers that are pictures of different monsters. And obviously, I'm sure lots of people have thought of this idea because it's just a cheaper route to go if you need lots of different types of basic monsters for your campaign and you don't want to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars on minis. You can just throw these pogs in, and they're obviously, it's something other people could come up with. And I'm thinking that they probably just had the same idea around the same time I did, playing on Roll20 or other virtual tabletops. You often bring in tokens for your characters, and the most common tokens are these round portraits of the different things that you're representing in those virtual tabletops. So it was easy to make the jump to a physical product with pogs and stickers that are portraits of these different creatures or adventurers, although I think you'd rather want to have minis for your adventures. And then you find a lot of goblins, well, then there's goblin pogs, and this case carries those things around. So those are the two new products for Dungeon Masters. And then there was an announcement of Dungeons and Dragons the movie coming out in 2023 on March 3rd. So it was not it wasn't really a trailer, and it wasn't even a teaser. It was more of just an announcement And there was no announcement of a forthcoming trailer, which we'd all be interested in seeing. But now we know that, for now, the date of release for this movie is March 3rd, 2023. So let's get into Spelljammer and then Dragonlance, because that was the order that they came up, and that's the order I want to talk about them. So both of them were campaign settings that I really wanted ever since 5e began, because I played first and second edition, mostly second edition, and these were my two favorite campaign settings. And then when third edition came along, there was Dragonlance, but Spelljammer just kind of disappeared. Maybe certain aspects of it were brought into the other campaign settings, mostly the different monsters and stuff like that. But as a campaign setting and how to use the ships, that wasn't really brought into either third or fourth edition. So ever since fifth edition started, I was reminded of my childhood love of Spelljammer and the box sets that I had for Spelljammer, and that I never actually got around to playing Spelljammer campaign because, my friends at the time weren't that interested in it, and I wasn't pushing for it as much as just playing Dungeons and Dragons. So I like the idea that Spelljammer's coming in. It's a 3-book box set in a slipcase, much like the collector slipcases that they've been getting with the basic rules and the expanded rules. 3 hardcover books come in a slipcase and then have a Dungeon Master screen. And I'm looking forward to that, mainly because now you can take the ships that are in Spelljammer and use them in any campaign setting you have. I mean, the campaign that I've been running for a few years now uses the idea of Spelljammer. So there's at least one Spelljamming ship owned by the player characters that are in my campaign, and then there are Neogi, which are these spider creatures that have their own spider Spelljamming ship that's been seen, but no one's actually, as of yet, really encountered it, as in had to deal with fighting this thing. So I'm looking forward to being able to have the actual ship combat rules. However, most of my campaign so far has taken place in an atmosphere, not in the Ptolemaic space of Spelljammer. So for those of you not familiar with Spelljammer, it takes this idea that the universe of Dungeons & Dragons has different physical rules than our universe, and therefore you can take a large body, and if you can get it into space, it brings with it a pocket of air. And the larger the body, the larger the pocket of air, the longer the air stays fresh. And then you can traverse out of a solar system through these giant crystal spheres that surround a star system, and go out into what's called the phlogiston, which is this gas that's seemingly inert, but gods are afraid of. So gods don't travel outside of crystal spheres, and only the spelljamming ships can really do it, although there are creatures that live within the phlogiston, like, say, a giant space hamster, which, depending on how you view things, is either a horrendous concept or is an awesome concept. I'll leave that up to you. But I'm really looking forward to Spelljammer, and I'm really looking forward to running Spelljammer in 5th edition, so I'm really glad that it was announced. I was a little bit surprised that it was announced, but I was also kind of expecting it because of some rumors, but I didn't really think that it was going to happen. And I definitely didn't think it was going to happen today as an announcement. I thought they were going to talk about other things on this D&D Direct thing, mostly relating to how they were going to do digital stuff with DnDBeyond, since they recently purchased DnDBeyond. But I am glad at these announcements. So the second big announcement, Dragonlance. Now, I love Dragonlance. You can see I've got tons of Dragonlance books, and I had this idea that, I've read, 100 or so of the 190 or more Dragonlance books that are available. And I always had this idea I'd be able to walk into a bookstore in my old age. I'm getting close to that old age, and be able to buy a Dragonlance book that I'd never read and read it. But unfortunately, fantasy books are disappearing, and at least in my area, Dragonlance books have basically disappeared off the shelf. However, there is a new Dragonlance book that was announced last year and is going to be released this August by the original authors, Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman. And I'm really looking forward to that. And of course, everyone thought once that news of that got leaked, and mostly due to a lawsuit that happened between the authors, which you can look up. We've moved past that point, so there's no point in discussing it here. But it basically was the thing that allowed us to understand that this Dragonlance campaign setting might actually be coming to 5th edition, because they're releasing a new book with the original authors, and seemingly the synopsis of the book suggests that it's a revamp of the series, maybe a soft reboot. We don't really know the specifics, but a lot of people have suspected at least a soft reboot, if not a hard reboot. There is some time travel involved. However, time travel in Dragonlance works a little differently in that most races cannot affect the flow of time except for the Chaos races, i.e. the races that were born of the Grey Gem of Gargath, like, say, Kender. So this campaign setting could be a hard reboot because of that. So I'm looking forward to it, but I don't know what to expect, because I don't know what the world of Dragonlance will look like in this campaign setting and once these books come out. But if it does bring back the books that I haven't bought yet and that I haven't read yet in, second editions that I can then buy and read, that'd be great all on its own. And I've never really actually played a campaign in Dragonlance. One of the reasons, and I talked about this on a podcast that I have, Dungeons and Dragons in History, that one of the reasons I never played a campaign in Dragonlance is because the setting has been fleshed out so much by the books that often people don't want to either follow in the footsteps of the heroes that already did, possibly greater things, or change the timeline so that they're the heroes and then things are different. And that's the way I kind of felt about it when I was younger, but I don't feel that way about it now, because of this idea of the Dungeons and Dragons multiverse. So this can just be your Dragonlance or my Dragonlance, and then there's Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman's Dragonlance, and we can all live in it. And I think I gained that perspective thanks to the podcast that is done by the guys that run the Dragonlance Nexus. So if you're interested in Dragonlance and you don't know about the Dragonlance Nexus, and you don't know about their podcast, just Google Dragonlance Nexus and you'll be able to find all that. And they've done a very good job of keeping Dragonlance alive all these years when it's been basically out of print. So now we're also getting a 3-book slipcase like Spelljammer, and it'll have the full campaign setting, looks like probably some adventures and a monster manual, which is great. And that is probably the thing I'm most looking forward to, because I haven't had a Dragonlance book in a hardcover Dragonlance book basically since 1st edition. I had some box sets from 2nd edition, but then once 3rd edition came along, I had kind of moved out of the hobby into other things, and I only recently came back when 5th edition was launched. So I basically haven't had materials for Dungeons and Dragons, for Dragonlance in that long. Same with Spelljammer, really. But Dragonlance is the thing that really got me into fantasy and Dungeons and Dragons. So that puts it a step above Spelljammer in my book. But I do love Spelljammer, and I'm looking forward to it. So that's basically the announcements that really caught my attention. If there were other announcements or other things that are coming up that anyone thinks is notable, then let me know below, because I'd really like to hear about anything that's happening, especially if there's stuff coming up with the Dungeons & Dragons Beyond and the digital releases now that they're part of Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast. So, thanks for joining me, and see you in the next video.